guys, welcome back to the Speaker's Edge podcast, a podcast designed to help you learn from some of the world's very best speakers and communicators so that you can master your message and inspire your audience every single time you speak. I'm your host for this podcast, Roddy Galbraith, and it's great that you've chosen to join us today. Today we're going to be digging into episode 8 and we're talking about body language. Now, there's a lot to body language. There's a lot to all of these different lessons, actually, and we're going to come back to most of them in different ways later in the program. But for now, we're talking about body language. We're talking about standing up and speaking in front of people in person. We're going to come back to virtual body language, and we're going to come back to stagecraft as well. So 8 different areas that you can focus on to really help with your body language. Big mistakes, the most common mistakes that people make, what to avoid, and some of the top tips that work for most people most of the time, things that you really want to get good at and delegate to habit. Now, the important thing, or at least an encouraging thing when we're talking about body language, is you can feel very uncomfortable, you can feel afraid, but if you get the basics right, you will look like you belong. Isn't that nice? No matter how you feel on the inside, they're going to look at you and think, oh yeah, she's a natural speaker. She's a natural speaker. Now, before we get into today's episode, you might want to download the companion resources. You can go to maxwellleadership.com/the speaker's edge. maxwellleadership.com/the speaker's edge. And we would love it if you downloaded and saved each episode, follow the show, rate the show, maybe write a short review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever you enjoy your podcasts. That would be wonderful. Thank you very much. All right, just in case you've missed the previous episodes, let's just do a quick recap, because each episode so far is building as we lay these foundations of ethical influence. First of all, we talked about fear and how most people start out there, and if you allow it to stop you, you never grow. So we have to find a way to tackle the fear, and then we can move to overcoming fear, developing self-confidence, even developing unshakable self-confidence. So that was episode 1. In episode 2, we talked about who's in the audience. That's the next most important consideration. Once you've decided you're going to tackle any anxiety you may have that's stopping you moving forwards, then we're going to talk about who's in the audience. Then we can work out how we're going to help them. Then when we know who's in the audience, our next thing is how we're going to connect with them. So episode 3 was about connecting. When we've connected with them, episode 4, you've got to have something to say. And then episode 5, can you bring it to life with different examples? Episode 6 was keep the magic of the first time every time, even though you may have said it before, even though you may have worked very hard to be at your best when you're sharing this message. The audience must never know that you've done that much work. So how to keep the magic of the first time every time. And then in the last episode, we talked about, do I need to memorize my speech or not, my message or not? And then we talked about how to move beyond memorizing to internalizing. And then today, as I said, we're talking about the delivery, and specifically we're talking about body language. So we could say body language basics. So how important then is body language? How important is body language? Well, if I say to you, do you think this will work for me? And you say, yeah, of course. How convincing is that? I don't find that very convincing. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Your words are saying one thing, but your voice and your body language could be saying something very different. And in that situation, we're going to think, something doesn't add up here. I don't trust you, or it feels off, or I'm not going to buy this. I'm not going to go with this. So the message can say something, our delivery can say something else. There's a lot of research out there. Some of it's coming for criticism. Some of it's very helpful. Some people like some bits. Some people like other bits. I wouldn't get hung up on any particular numbers or anything about what is most important, the words, your voice, or your body language. Just think of it as the message is important, of course, but the messenger is probably even more important. How you deliver the message is even more important. And when we're talking about the messenger, largely we're talking about our voice and our body language, aren't we? Our character is important as well, and our intention as well, what we're trying to achieve. All of those things are a part of it. But let's focus on our voice and our body language. And today we're talking about body language. And it's important for many different reasons, but not least of all, when you make a first impression, when you stand up to speak, let's say you're speaking to a group of people who haven't seen you before for the first time, their first impression is, to a very large extent, is going to be based on what they see before they even hear you, possibly, and certainly before they process your message and understand your credentials, your credibility, your expertise, your message for them that day. It's going to be based on what they see. So body language is huge from that perspective as well. All right, let's talk generally about body language. Body language is very important. When you look at somebody like John Maxwell, he breaks all the rules of body language. And so we have to, first of all, understand that when you're that good, different rules apply. Basically, for John, whatever works. Well, he can do whatever he wants as long as it works. And he's, in my opinion, the best in the world. So it works very well, of course. But for the rest of us, while we're trying to work out, what works for us and what doesn't, there's a couple of kind of principles or guide rails, if you like, that we want to keep in mind. Number one is sameness is the death of the communicator. Any type of sameness when you're communicating, you're going to lose the audience. So on the one hand, we've got sameness is the death of the communicator. And then on the other hand, we've got this kind of freedom to do whatever we want as long as it works, as long as it's not distracting, as long as it's not annoying for the audience. So we've got we can do whatever we want as long as it's not distracting. We've got sameness is the death of the speaker, and we need to kind of operate in between there. Now, body language generally, it can support our message, of course. We can use it for emphasis, so particularly gestures with our hands, we can emphasize what we're saying. So number one, we can use body language to emphasize our message. But if we try and emphasize everything, if we're passionate about everything, if we try and emphasize everything, then nothing stands out, because emphasizing everything is emphasizing nothing. So number one, we can use body language for emphasis. Number two, we can use body language to illustrate what we're talking about. And sometimes that can work well. But you can't illustrate everything. It's a little bit patronizing if you try and do that. But just here and there, little gestures can make a difference. And then number three, we can use body language to break up the sameness. So anything we do too long, remember rule number one, sameness is the death of the communicator. Anything we do too much of becomes distracting. So within those kind of vague rules, do what we like, as long as it's not distracting, as long as it's not too samey, then we can find what works for us. Now, when we're talking about body language, most of us have developed our body language when we speak in conversation. So it's habits that we've picked up, behaviors that we've delegated to habits, good habits or bad habits, but we've developed them in conversation because most of us haven't grown up speaking on stage and developing our habits that way. So think about our habits as something that we do without thinking, really helps us, but they could be good habits, they could be bad habits, and they're probably not suited to standing up and speaking on the platform, standing up in front of people where we're doing all the talking, if they've been developed just haphazard by luck, experimentation in conversation. Okay, so we probably need to change some of those habits. Now, when we think about habits are an enormous advantage to us. You don't have to learn to walk every morning when you get up. You got that down, and you don't need to relearn it again, or at least most of us don't need to do that. So that frees up our mind to not think about how to walk, how to balance, how to breathe, or whatever else it is. We do those things. Our mind then is free. So our ability to do lots and lots of different things habitually is really vast. There's enormous power there when you think about it. The processing of different events and interacting with our environment. Think of driving a car as a great example. Once you're good at it, you don't have to think about it. All of these habits that we've acquired all those programs can run the business of driving the car. We can think about something else. In fact, we can end up 20 miles down the road and realize, I wasn't really conscious of any of that last 10 miles, 20 miles, whatever it is. So habits are very useful. We can do lots of different things at once. We don't need to think, and they happen very, very quickly. But they're very limited. They can only play out that program can only play the way it's recorded to a very large extent. So habits are very fast, they're high quantity, we can process enormous amounts of stuff, but they're not creative, they're not adaptive, they have zero IQ, if you like. But thinking, consciously considering things, that's different, that's very creative. We can choose something completely different, something new. We can tackle things we've never done before, but it's very slow, often very frustrating, uses a lot of energy to think. And we can only do one of those things. We can only really think about one thing at a time, can't we? This is why learner drivers, when they're learning to drive, they're so slow, because they can only process each thing one at a time. And there's a lot to do, so they have to slow it down so that they can deal with the indicators or the turn signals, whatever you call them, the rear view mirror, side mirrors, changing gear, emerging hazards, etc., etc., etc. So habits are very fast, but they're limited. Thinking is very adaptive, it's creative, but it's slow, and we can only really do one thing at a time. So if we're thinking about what we're going to say, everything else is on autopilot. If we're thinking about our message, what am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? Everything else is on autopilot. So then the question is, are those good habits that we've developed, or are they bad habits that we've developed? Are they helping us, or are they holding us back? So we may need to work on some of those habits that we've delegated. Now, if we're thinking too much about our message, then our personality normally goes out the window. We slow down because we're thinking about our message. We're trying to think about what we're going to say next. And it's just so officious. It's so lifeless. It's not you at your best. It's not representative of you. But it's you when you're struggling to think about what you're going to say and how you can remember perhaps some of the things that you thought about saying before you started speaking. So you seem lifeless. You seem like you've got no personality. You're still a nice person. You're still a nice person, but no one would ever know. Now, if you know your message very well, then less thinking power is needed for you to share your message. And so then you're free for your personality to come out. So that is you at your best. They get to know you. Then they get to like you. Then they feel like they can trust you. So to a very large extent, the better you know your message, the more likely they are to see you at your best. So that's important to think of as well. Now, one other thing before we kind of dive into some of these pitfalls that many people fall into. The way that you're perceived by your audience doesn't necessarily match how you feel. So for example, let's say that you're cold and so you cross your arms to kind of keep you warm and you feel comfortable with your arms crossed. You feel like you're warming up. You feel warm, you feel good, but you may be perceived as cold, aloof, indifferent, closed off. Now, what's the truth? The truth is you're none of those things. You're just cold. How are you perceived? Cold, aloof, indifferent, closed off. So if that's the case, if that's the risk, then we've got to change that, haven't we? It's up to us. We can think about how we want to come across to the audience or the people or the person that we're speaking to, and then we can change how we're perceived. Knowing that, we can work on that. So that's the bad news, if you like. But the flip side of that is good news, because if you are feeling anxious on the inside, but you work on your body language habits, you get the basics right, get your stance, your hands, and your face right. If you then work on those, delegate those actions to habit, those basics, just a few things, then you look like you're a natural speaker. You look like you're happy. You look like you belong, even though you feel uncomfortable inside. Isn't that nice? That's good to know. So we just need to keep going until the feelings catch up with how we're perceived in that case. All right, so we'll look at the things, and this is after many, many, many years of working with people on their presenting, 18 plus years speaking professionally and as a professional speaker trainer for thousands and thousands of people. Basically, I've seen over and over and over again, the world over, the same mistakes pop up all the time, the same pitfalls. What seems like a good idea when you start out, the same people make those mistakes. If we can avoid those mistakes, it's going to make a big difference to how we're perceived by the audience. New speakers make the same mistakes over and over and over again, with very few exceptions. So if we can focus in the right areas, avoid those mistakes, follow the best practices that I'm going to share with you afterwards, then you will look like you belong up there in front of that audience, no matter how you feel. All right, so we'll start then. There's different kind of areas of focus. The first one is feet. We think about our feet and mistakes that people make with their feet. The first one is what I call the penguin, where they have their heels together and their feet out at like 90 degrees like this. And they stand, and then when they move, they kind of shuffle and they look a little bit like a penguin. And when I say to people, it looks a bit awkward the way you're standing like that, they say, well, this is how I'm comfortable. Now, remember what we just said about what you may be comfortable in and how you're perceived by the audience. If it's not helping you achieve your goals as a communicator, then I think there's a great case to be made that it's got to go. You've got to try and change the way you stand. Now, the one exception to this, every so often I'll say, I don't think you should stand like that. It doesn't quite look professional or presidential, perhaps, like you want to come across. and they'll say, oh, well, I have a medical reason. You know, if I put my feet like this, it cuts the blood supply off to my head, or I faint, or there's different kind of things. Sometimes people have limitations in the way they can stand, and they can't always do what I'm encouraging them to do. So with that caveat, you decide how you want to stand, but generally speaking, if you're in the habit of standing one way, it will feel comfortable, and if you change it, it will feel uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that that can't become comfortable if you do internalize that habit, just like you have any other habit. Does that make sense? So you decide whether it's safe for you to, if you've been advised not to stand in a certain way, then go with that, of course. But outside of that, if it's just something you've got comfortable with, I think you want to change some of those things. And so where you put your feet, the penguin is like this. Beauty pageants also often have their feet at like 90 degrees in a different kind of way. It doesn't look professional. It doesn't look presidential. I think you want to change it, and we'll come back to what looks good. But for now, you don't want to do the penguin or the beauty pageant or the puppet. Actually, the puppet is where the toes come off the floor like they're attached on a string, and somebody's lifting the string up and your toes are coming up off the floor. The only people that do this are speakers that are trying to convince the audience they're comfortable when they're not actually comfortable. Now I've mentioned it, you'll see it all over the place. You'll be like, oh yeah, you'll see. People do weird things, and it doesn't work. It doesn't convince us. It looks wrong. Can be very distracting. Similar to toes off the floor, the heel off the floor, when they're really trying to put passion into their message, and they kind of crouch, and their toe ball of the foot is on the floor at the front, their heel is off at the back, their legs are bent like they're ready to pounce on the audience. It doesn't work for you. It really doesn't. Trust me. Video yourself and see, but keep your heels flat on the floor, keep your toes on the floor, and don't do the penguin. Okay? The next one then, so that's the feet. Simple. The next one is then, let's move on to the legs. And with the legs, you don't want to bend one knee or the other to rest your hip. So very often you see horses do this a lot, don't they? They rest one hip, they bend a leg, and the pelvis kind of tilts one way. And when they tend to rest one leg, they'll change every so often, so then they'll bend the other knee and shift to the other side. It looks sloppy. I call it the hipster because it's kind of like too cool for school, down with the kids, you know, very kind of real. I'm just being real with you. It doesn't look professional. So avoid the hipster. Also, to do with the stance, but now really a little bit of movement, I call it the hypnotic wobbler. Fourth kind of thing to be avoided, the hypnotic wobbler, because people take this kind of swaying from side to side when they're talking, and it's unconscious body language, but they're swaying from side to side, and it really doesn't work. It's like, it looks distracted, it looks like you're in your mind, you're somewhere else, but as you're moving from one side to the other and we're watching you, we start kind of following you, and then suddenly we're out. You've lost us. And then we need to snap back. Something needs to snap us back. Otherwise, you know, we might be out for 20 minutes or so. Who knows? So the wobbler is one. The hypnotic wobbler is definitely one to be avoided. And related to this, the unconscious body language where you're just stepping from side to side or stepping round in a circle is very common, or backwards and forwards. They're all unconscious body language for people who are a little uncomfortable, perhaps in front of the audience. Practice standing still. Try and avoid the hypnotic wobbler. Similarly, number 4, the fourth area, so we talked about feet, legs, stance, pacing. Like the caged lion is self-explanatory, isn't it? Pacing up and down. You're at the front of the stage, pacing up and down, or in front of the boardroom, wherever you are, pacing up and down like a caged lion, staring at the audience, waiting for your time to come. Sameness is the death of the communicator, even when it's movement. That movement can become too samey. In fact, anything can become too samey when we're talking about sameness is the death of the communicator. So avoid the caged lion pacing up and down. All right, then on to the body and the arms and the hands. So we'll talk about hands next. Another one that's very popular, again, people who are trying to convince the audience that they're comfortable when they're uncomfortable, is the kind of diamond hands, where you put your thumbs together at the top and your fingers together at the bottom, and you're worried about moving your hands too much, so you bring them together like this in front of the body. You feel like it looks neat and therefore professional. People don't do this unless they're speakers who are uncomfortable trying to pretend they're comfortable. You'll almost never see professionals on TV doing this. People who are in front of a camera all the time, used to speaking in front of people all the time. Very rarely do you see them do this. So don't make interesting, distracting things with your hands. Diamond hands is a very common one. Knitted fingers is another one as well. Doesn't matter how high or low you do it. Higher is even worse, but all of them are bad. So just avoid diamond hands, avoid knitted fingers. Also the doorman with your hands clutched together in front of your vitals, typically feet shoulder width apart or even more, very kind of solid defensive stance, and your hands in a defensive position as well. That, I think, obviously, but you decide for yourself, it's not very inviting. You don't seem like you want to connect with us. You look like you want to be somewhere else, or if we make one wrong move, then you're going to karate chop us to the neck or something. So avoid the doorman. Or arms crossed can be very similar as well, as I said, like, very judgy and not open to whatever it is you're going to say. So avoid arms crossed. And remember, it doesn't matter if it's comfortable. It's how you're perceived that's important. So arms crossed is one to avoid. T-Rex, where you anchor your elbows to your body and you move your hands very fussily, maybe from the elbow, so your hands are moving up and down, or maybe just from the wrist in front of your body. And it looks fussy, it's cluttered, it looks unprofessional, it's not flattering. So avoid T-Rex with your hands in front of the body, elbows anchored, and movements from the wrist or from the elbows in front of the body. Looks very fussy. Number 7, the next area is gesticulating. So gesticulating with your hands. Many people tell me that they love to talk with their hands, and they typically talk all the time with their hands. So they're saying things, but they're just waving their hands around all the time, trying to add emphasis to everything that they're saying. And as we've already said, it doesn't work. In fact, most people's defense is, yeah, but you don't understand, I'm Italian and we talk with our hands. I talk with my hands all the time. Or I'm South American. Or you don't understand, I'm from Guatemala. We talk with our hands. It's like, it doesn't matter what's natural or you're comfortable doing or what you're in the habit of doing. If it's not going to give you or help you get the results that you want, if it's standing in the way, then it's got to be something you think about changing. So moving your hands, gesticulating with your hands less is going to make a big difference. Similarly, distracting, I can't kind of curl my hair with my finger for obvious reasons, but if I had hair, I could. Women tend to do this more, but curling their hair around your finger, it's kind of unconscious movement. It's distracting. It looks like you're distracted. It's not professional. Don't fiddle with your hair. If you've got keys in your pockets or money in your pockets or anything in your pockets, don't put your hands in your pockets and fiddle with anything. Don't fiddle with the cartilage in your ear or pull on your throat or any of those things. Don't fiddle with anything. It's not professional. It's not working for you. So avoid the Italian, avoid the fiddler. So that's gesticulating. And then the face is obviously, the head is important as well. So the apologist, where you're kind of trying to hide away, make yourself smaller by shrinking down, hunching over, not looking at the audience, looking down a lot of the time. That kind of apologist, shrinking away, maybe feeling guilty or ashamed maybe, or you're worried that you're not good enough to be in front of them, or what have I got to say, hiding your personality away, trying to make yourself as small as possible so you disappear. It doesn't work. You don't gain anything and you lose everything. So the apologist is definitely one to be avoided. Also, depending on your face, depending on your expressions, I'm a very cheerful person, but if I'm not smiling, you would never know that I was cheerful. And Susan often would say to me, what have I done now? I'm like, what do you mean? She says, why are you so angry? I'm like, I'm not angry, I'm happy. She's like, well, you do not look happy. Tell your face, because you do not look happy. And my whole life, actually, now, I realize, studying this years later, people have said to me, what's wrong with you? Nothing. Well, why are you so miserable? I'm not miserable, I'm happy. Well, you don't look happy at all. The people wouldn't believe me. But it's just my resting face. In fact, Susan says I have an RBF, whatever that is. So you decide, if you video yourself or if you take pictures of yourself, or you can see how the audience sees you, you can decide whether you want to change that. So I've realized if I'm not smiling or I'm not moving my face, I look really miserable. And so that's my responsibility, not the audience's responsibility. So that's something I can take control of once I know. So facial expressions generally is a big area. So there's 8 different kind of areas to focus on, if you like. Your feet, your legs, your stance, your movement, your pacing around, your hands, your arms, elbows, shoulders, wrists, gesticulating, and your head, particularly your face. Different areas and a number of different kind of postures, if you like, that I've kind of captured and parodied with something that will help you remember them. The penguin, the puppet, the hipster, too cool for school, the hypnotic wobbler, the caged lion is an obvious one, diamond's hands, the doorman, T-Rex, the Italian, the fiddler, the apologist, and RBF, whatever that means. Okay, so before we look at what we can do about this, things that work for most people most of the time. You've heard me talk about the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team if you've been a follower of the show in each different episode. If you want to find out how easy it is to become a Maxwell Leadership Certified Team member, whether you want to work on your coaching, your speaking, your leadership, your business. For speaking, it really is a no-brainer, but it's great for all of these different areas and many, many more. We've been working on the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team since 2010. The Maxwell method of speaking is a part of it. There's nearly 60,000 people that have been through the program so far that are coaches around the world in over 168 countries, I think it is now. So if you want to develop your speaking, the Maxwell method of speaking is for you, and the best place to learn that is in the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team. But there's so much more to it than that. Best thing you can do is jump on a call with a program advisor and let them ask you a few questions. You ask them a few questions, and you can quickly see if it's a fit for you. If it is a fit, it will be the best time you've ever spent, best call you've ever made. And if it's not a fit, you've just lost a couple of minutes of your time, but worth it, worth it. So check it out, maxwellleadership.com/speak. All right, let's talk about then the power of some of the patterns, body language patterns that can really work for you. I realized this in working with people who were terrified in our studio and coaching them through standing in a certain way, doing certain things with their hands and eye contact and smiling at the camera. And they still felt terrified, but they looked very different. It was very enlightening the first time I realized this. And then because I would sit down and play back the video with them and we go through it together, they could see themselves that they looked quite elegant actually. And they'd watch themselves and I'd be like, I look way better than I thought. I look much better than I felt. And so it's very, very encouraging for us, as I said at the beginning, to think if we can get the basics right, we can really come across very differently than we actually feel. And then we can help people. All right, so let's look at some of those then. Basically, we're trying to counteract all of the problem areas that I talked about, first of all. So instead of doing the penguin, keep your feet parallel together and closer together than you think, probably touching or maybe just a little bit apart. It won't feel comfortable at first, but get used to it. Stand like that all the time, and it will gradually, quite quickly actually, become a habit if you try and do a little bit each day. If you're standing in the supermarket line, then you can stand presidentially, you can stand with your feet together, you can stand up straight like you're in front of an audience, and you'll internalize that habit that much quicker. So feet together, parallel, almost touching or touching, depending on your shoes, length of your legs, etc., etc. You can decide for yourself. Number 2, the puppet, where you got your toes off the floor. Simple. Keep your toes on the floor. Unless your story is about your toes coming off the floor for some reason, keep your toes on the floor. Same with the heels. You just have your feet on the floor. That's a law. We're going to stick with that, okay? You just got to do it. Keep your feet flat on the floor. Keep your feet together. The hipster, this is where we're resting one leg. Just stand up straight, then resting the other. No, stand up straight. Keep your legs straight if it's healthy and safe for you to do so. Keep your height and kind of relax into it, but don't shrink away. Stand up proudly and look the world in the eye. So don't rest one leg or the other. That's the legs. With your stance, avoid the wobbler. So you're not going to kind of sway from side to side or move unnecessarily. So you can just stand up straight. Avoid the caged lion, of course, pacing one way or the other. You can move, but you're going to move with purpose. So until then, kind of stay still. Sameness is the death of the speaker. So you can't stand exactly the same all the time or it'll become too samey, but you don't need to move around all over the place just for the sake of moving. It looks distracted. Number 5, when we're talking about the hands, instead of having weird resting positions for our hands that are very, very awkward, we're going to adopt a neutral position for our hands that is neat, looks professional, is uninteresting. In fact, it goes unnoticed. And for most people, it's our hands coming together in front of the belly button, thumbs around belly button height, and fingers just below, so that the angle of your arm is just a little bit greater than 90 degrees. So greater than 90 degrees. If it's less than 90 degrees, it looks fussy and your shoulders tend to tense and you look tense. And greater than 90 degrees, it looks very elegant, and you can experiment then with different positions for your hands. You can leave one in front of your belly button and then return it. You can move both of them. Big movements from the arms, from the shoulder, works much better than fussy movements from the wrist and the elbows in front of the body. So watch people on TV, watch news presenters, watch correspondents in the field, watch the weather people. They all have really good body language habits and a great resting, neutral position for their hands. Look out for that. Arms, we can move our arms, but as I said, move from the elbow. Bigger movements than you think, slower than you think. Leave them out there a little longer than you think, then return. You don't need to wave them around all over the place. Avoid the wrists and the elbows. Bigger movements from the shoulders work much better. Gesticulating, remember, you can emphasize things that you're saying, but it needs to be a small percentage. You know, maybe it's 5% of the things you're saying you're really emphasizing with your words. If you move your hands all the time, cutting it down to half the time is going to make an enormous difference. So break the habit first, and you can intentionally build it back up again. So gesticulating or acting out what's happening in your presentation, both valid ways for moving your hands. Don't just move them all the time. And then for breaking up the sameness, if your hands has been in one position for 20 or 30 seconds, maybe you're just going to vary that a little bit. And if you practice this, you soon won't think about it. You'll do it by habit. When it comes to the head and our face, instead of kind of shrinking from the world, stand up to the world. Look the world in the eye. Imagine you've got a thread from the top of your head lifting you up. Keep your height so that your neck is straight. Tuck your chin in a little bit, and then keep your height, but then kind of relax into it. My osteopath told me years ago, if you can get your head right, then the shoulders take care of themselves. If you haven't got your head right, then the shoulders hunch forward and you kind of default into the apologist. So stand up, look the world in the eye, imagine your head is being lifted up, put your shoulders back, and then just kind of relax into it. And you're going to check what you look like on video so you can get a real feel for this. And remember to smile, make eye contact with the audience, smile. Facial expressions are great, shrugging, raising your eyebrows, just letting your personality out in appropriate ways. So lots of different ways that we can then counteract to the mistakes that we made. You could sum it all up by saying presidential. It's a lovely way of explaining it, isn't it? When I heard that, I thought, oh yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Presidential. That really, really sums it up. So you're professional, you're likable, you seem appropriate for the message that you're sharing. So presidential. Imagine how, pick your favorite president, imagine how they might stand, imagine how they might interact. I think I've got a few in mind that are very appropriate as a kind of presidential model for body language, some perhaps that less so, but you decide based on your audience and your message and your personality. Standing up presidential in front of the audience, to me, makes sense. Remember the basic rules as you experiment with body language. Sameness is the death of the communicator. So we don't want to be too samey, we want to be mixing it up, but we can't be too distracting. We can't be too distracting either. That would be mixing up the sameness a lot, wouldn't it? But that would be too much. So in between those two guide rails, you can experiment. Best thing you can do is video yourself and watch it back and make up your mind if you like the way that you're coming across. You can see then, you get that audience perspective of what you look like, and you can make your mind up as to if that's how you want to be perceived by your audience. Video yourself, watch it back, and choose what you like and discard what you don't. Keep experimenting, keep discovering. I think, that kind of conversational intimacy that we talked about a few episodes back, we're trying to create this intimate space, a friendly space, and the right kind of body language, like John says, my name's John and I'm your friend, that epitomizes that, doesn't it? He's trying to create that intimate, friendly space. My name's John and I'm your friend. It's immediately welcoming and appropriate for most speaking engagements. So one way that you can keep this in mind is by putting on your mirror so that you can see it every morning when you get up. I'm a confident, likable expert with an impactful message that really helps people. I'm a confident, likable expert with an impactful message that really helps people. I'm a confident, likable expert with an impactful message that really helps people. Put it on your mirror, read it every day. All right, so that's it for this episode. Don't forget to download our companion guide if you haven't done so already, maxwellleadership.com/The Speaker's Edge. Communication really is one of the most important skills that you can develop, and hopefully you're seeing each episode, this is a learnable skill. There's very simple things that we can learn that are going to make a big difference with our communication so that we really can master our message, master the delivery, and inspire our audience every time we speak. Thanks for listening today. Looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Take care. Lots of love. Bye-bye.